So let's talk about the lest we forget kind of conversation, right? What are the things that are pressing in the minds and lives of Kenyans on a daily basis today? If you were to just to pick them randomly, from what people say, from the things that people are going through, cost of living has been there. I mean, shooting prices of food and basic commodities. It's been happening over a period of time. The price of unga went up, has sustained up there. Price of other basics gone up as well. Price of mafuta ya kupika gone up. Price of rice and other grains up. Even mboga up. And it's been there for a while.
It has been there for a while.
And people have been saying, okay, we need to see what can be done so that then these prices are stabilized.
It has become significantly worse, though, and that what you're able to buy for the same amount of shillings that you were 6 months ago, you're not able to do that today. And this has been a pain point for a lot of people, that you take the same number of shillings and you go to wherever it is that you purchase things from, and you've not been able to do that because things have become more and more expensive. The number of items that you would normally be able to get, you're not able to, or you get less. Even if it's the same number, you get much less in terms, and that goes across board. It goes from, your items that you buy for food and sustenance to your power bill, to the amount of, units of power that you can buy for the same shilling that you would use before. So the truth of the matter is that people have felt the bite, and from all indicators, it seems to be getting worse.
It's just rising.
It's just rising.
On a daily basis.
Rising on a daily basis. You take 1,000 shillings to the supermarket or wherever it is that you buy, and this is on the higher side of things. There are folks who are not. We're not talking about 1,000 bob.
Talking about 100 to 200.
We're talking about 100 to 200 shillings, and that is to eat on the day. It's nothing like storage. There's nothing like keeping for a rainy day. It is to consume with your family on that day, and it's not funny. We have the minute economy where people are buying small amounts of cooking oil, small amounts of vegetables, small amounts of maize flour to be able to feed on a particular day. And we're seeing that the quantities that people are able to buy for the 100 shillings, for the 200 shillings are reduced, or that you're now only able to buy less in terms of items. No emotion, no crying. That's the fact.
It's life.
That's it.
But in life. We're also in the midst of the worst drought in a decade. For the last 40 years, Kenya has not been where it is today. Those who will tell you, at least they are in agreement, it's at least 40 years. There's some that are saying it's the worst drought in 70 years. It's a worst drought, at least we are in agreement. For the last 40 years, we haven't seen this kind of drought. What's that happening? It means 23 counties, that's more than the half of Kenya's landmass, are actually facing severe drought. 5.4 million people are in that crisis mode, in dire need of food on a daily basis. And also those same 5.4 million people are the ones whose livelihoods have been decimated by the drought. People whose livestock has basically just died. We see these photos regularly in news, on newspapers, on social media, photos being shared of just carcasses of animals dead. That is people's livelihoods. When you see an animal dead, that is somebody's cow, that's somebody's goat, that's somebody's sheep, that's somebody's livelihood, that's somebody's ability to actually put food on the table. So those ones are not able to put food on the table. 5.4 million Kenyans are in this situation, and we are counting. We are also having a problem with health in terms of the number of people who today are unable to afford just taking their kin to hospital, taking themselves to hospital. And when they go to hospital, the counties are saying, all right, so we are trying the best we can. We haven't received money, so we are not even able to get the supplies. So you go to a hospital, a health facility, and you are also not able to get the supplies that you need. Many. These are the things that people are grappling with on a daily basis today. There are parents who've taken their children to school. They did grade 6, they have gone to grade 7, and they're coming back home in the evening. Mmesoma nini leo? Tunangoja teacher akuje. Very many children who've gone to grade 7 and they're going back home days after school's opened, and there are no teachers. There are no facilities. It's not clear. So how are we going to be able to operate with our sister secondary schools, or we can use the facilities in our sister secondary schools. Some of these teachers who've been posted to these schools, it's 2 teachers teaching 14 subjects. And then they find the headmaster of the primary school who tells them, oh, by the way, kuna grade 5 pia, funza wao, now that you are here.
SST.
Yes.
Yeah.
So junior secondary teachers are also being now taken to the primary school side to teach, and there are few anyway.
And if I may add to that,
Please.
if it's even making it a bit worse, is that as of yesterday, the 9.6 billion shillings that was supposed to have been released by Treasury for JSS specifically has not been released.
So the school heads have not received money
No, please.
to work on this.
No, please.
And it's on a daily basis. When you say JSS, people just assume, okay, there's children that they see around. We're talking about 1 million children, all right? 1 million children across the country who are supposed to be in JSS. Many of them, especially in these ASAL counties, are not even going to school. They cannot go to school.
And they haven't been going to school for quite a while.
They haven't.
Yes.
We saw the other day the CS for Education, Machogu, saying now let's work with the teachers, let's work with everybody, go and especially get those children who are not in school. In the coastal counties, why are these children not in school? Can you go and get them? Can you tell them to come to school? Why are they not reporting to school? So these are issues that are there on a daily basis. These are the matters that we expect our leaders to be addressing. Are these the matters that we're hearing our leaders addressing on a daily basis? When did you last hear President William Ruto actually talk about JSS or his deputy Rigathi Gachagua? Even when they have the Minister for Education in their midst, when do they raise the issue of JSS? When do they raise the issue of secondary school transition and how expensive and costly it's become for people to send their children to Form 1? That they cannot afford to send the children to Form 1 to the schools that they have been admitted to. They have to look for a second or third choice school, which is what they could afford. Do you hear the president mention that? I haven't heard the president mention that. I deliberately have been following the president's speech for the last 1 week. I have not heard him mention education and the issues surrounding education. I have not heard him mention health and the issues surrounding health. Drought and the issues surrounding drought, and the fact that there are Kenyans today who are only waiting to have a single meal delivered to them. Or to look back and say, as a government, we formed a committee of private sector players, captains of industry, chaired by the Safaricom CEO Ndegwa, to mobilize resources to help our Kenyans. This is how far they've gone. This is how much they've mobilized. This is how much they are distributing. Have you heard the president or his deputy, who's in charge of this, talk about it in the last 1 week?
No.
I haven't. Have you heard the CEO of Safaricom and his team actually call the media and say, this is what we have raised so far, and these are the issues that we need to deal with? They haven't.
And they were appointed.
They have been appointed. They are in office to do that. They accepted the invitation by the government to mobilize resources for this. How far are we? Those leaders who were elected by people across the country, across the 290 constituencies, and 47 women MPs who are in parliament, plus 47 senators, plus others who have been nominated into the Senate, have you heard them mention this issue?
Okay. So last week, yes, the week before last, we heard that Parliament, it was brought before the plenary on this matter of education. Of course, it did not look at the entirety of the challenges that are being faced by the education system at the moment, or that what children have to go through. The issues that were brought out was the combination then of JSS with current primary schools. The issues that came out was the cost and what needed to happen in terms of the curriculum that is currently being used. So there was an option of get this CBC right or go back to 844 until you're able to get it right. And what does it mean getting it right? Number one, it means putting necessary funding behind CBC. That facility is required in order for it to run the course in which it was originally designed to run. In terms of curriculum development, I don't think there's a problem with that. It's been developed, the curriculum is there. But the wheels the oil, the fuel to get it going, in a lot of times is funding, it's capacity, it's infrastructure, capacity being teachers, infrastructure being the actual classrooms and the labs that you need. It's funding to see that these things actually happen. That has not happened. So the thing is, if you can't get it right, get rid of it. They came up with a resolution to advise the president to say, make a decision about this thing, because number one, it's becoming too expensive. Number two, it is actually inadequate. And number three, we are wasting time.
They hadn't foreseen this all along.
Our children are losing out on valuable time. But for me, unfortunately, it was a weak resolution, because all you've done is said, perhaps you want to say something about it. Whereas, as the law-making arm of government, you should then be able to be clear and fast in this decision. That there's so many things that are going wrong at the same time, and all we hear is the deafening silence. That cannot work.
And if
so this is the question you're asking. Have we heard anything come out? We've heard. Is it sufficient? Unfortunately, it is not. You cannot advise somebody to think about whether they would like to maybe say something. No.
The greatest irony of this is, as they were discussing this, there was also a matter of the supplementary budget that was before them. Parliament is a budget-making organ of states. Now, the members of parliament who are talking about all this have previously been complaining about, the disbursement of the release of NGCDF funds, because those funds are the ones that help them to sponsor children to go to school with bursaries.
Yes.
Okay? And they were able to even stage a walkout with the meeting with the Ministry of the National Treasury until that was sorted. They had a supplementary budget last week. Did they look and ask themselves, so what do we need to do to actually ensure that these children are learning? What do we need to do? How many more teachers do we need to hire? How many more? Can we ask the National Treasury to give us a plan? With the Teacher Service Commission, what is the plan? How are we financing to make sure that now that you have said you were not sure before where the junior secondary was going to be domiciled, now that you've said it's going to be in primary school, what are the facilities that we need to make it moving, to get it going? How do we finance that? It's urgent. The children are in school today. There are others who are in grade 6 who are watching and wondering, guy. There are parents who have taken their children to grade 7 and they're saying, teacher, headmaster, tunaweza ongea my son and daughter aingia standard 8 ndio afanye KCPE, tuache hii upuzi aende secondary.
And it's been done.
And there are many who are doing that. Many to the level that the Ministry of Education itself has written a circular cautioning that this is happening. This is what's happening. Members of Parliament have the budget policy statement in front of them, which is saying what the government hopes to spend on in the next financial year. Soon they'll have the budget estimates, which is the actual budget, which they're going to sit and discuss and make noise here and there and pass. How much are they going to allocate to these pressing needs? Do they talk about that? Do you hear them talking about that? Both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio legislators.
In fact, if you were to take this argument and give it an additional push and oomph, you see, the idea when you mention opposition, one of the things that is traditionally done is that the opposition, by its very existence, mirrors the government. It mirrors it in terms of structure, it mirrors it in terms of representation within the ministries. So whenever you have an issue that pertains to a certain area of our lives, and there's a ministry in charge of it, the opposition will have somebody who addresses that very, very, very issue in detail. Like now, and they're called shadow.
Yep.
Yes.
Shadow minister, shadow this and shadow the other. The issues that are bedeviling the country right now, well, we can segment them and put into respective ministries. Ministry of Education. Who is the shadow minister in the opposition for education? Who is the shadow minister in the opposition for the Treasury? How are they looking at these issues? So that when we have these discussions, one is saying, this is what is happening. Is it possible for us to do this and this and this? Because this is what can be done and this is how we can do it. Instead, what do we hear? The conversations are either a blame game, meaning something has gone wrong and somehow we seem to be solving these problems by pointing fingers and saying this went wrong. We can all see what is going wrong. We don't actually need to be told.
No.
We actually live in this country. We don't visit it periodically or weekly. We actually live here on a daily basis, and we see these things. So now, when you have a situation where the leader of the opposition addresses rallies, we pray, there's a mention of the problems that bedevil us, but it's not specific, and we don't hear scheduled press conferences addressing each of these issues and saying, as the opposition, there's this and this and this and the other. The president and his deputy stand up and you're saying, okay, we have these issues. What we hear are huge multi-billion projects being talked about. That's what we hear. You have to ask the question, are these the things we actually need? You'll be told, no. When you're planning for development, you may not see the benefit immediately, okay? The benefit will come later. I agree.
When you have a malnourished child and you take this child to hospital, they know that there has to be a plan in order for you to get this child back to, full nourishment, etc. But what is the first thing they do? What's the first thing you do? You administer something that will
stabilize the child
and ensure the child stays alive.
Yep.
Stabilize the child. So we understand. I get it that there are long-term things that you need to put in place in order for your development progression then to be able to start to show. I get it.
But in the meantime,
today, and that's why I keep saying, today there are issues. Today, were we not told yesterday out a family of 12 loses 140 head of cattle, their entire sustenance, not left with a little bit, everything wiped out. So the question begins, on that particular day, how do they eat? Okay, you want to build an education system and you say, over years, we will be renowned because of 1, 2, 3, and we will have our students building phones and what technology. Wonderful. That's nice. But today, there are teachers that are not in school. They're not teaching. There is money that's supposed to have been released in order to get this thing of education actually rolling. It has not been done. There's infrastructure that is needed to be able to deliver a curriculum which you've approved and come up with, and your working party gave recommendations about how you should go, and they said, okay, yes, we should continue with this thing. Okay, so how about you get this thing moving? What about things that you need to do today? What about infrastructure that doesn't exist for these students to be able to sort it out? Okay, we said domicile it in primary schools. The closest primary school for a lot of people is a ways away. How are they supposed to get there? Okay, so what happens? Are they supposed to go there for science and then come back in the next high school? They're supposed to go for science class, then they walk back. What happens? And this is the nitty-gritty that we're talking about. So this malnourished child as it is, we understand that they'll start eating solids again once and they get back to proper nourishment. But stabilize the thing today so that you don't lose it completely. That's what we're talking about. We understand. We get it. You want to build 100 dams? Wonderful. But then there are people today who cannot water their crops and you cannot get something that you have to import food for. And that, for me, I love it that the bigger picture is being looked at, but the devil most oftentimes is in the details. It's in the small things that are often ignored that need to be done in order for you to have something to work on later.
Something which I found puzzling when I look at pictures that are taken in these ASAL areas of livestock dying. You see, livestock don't only exist in the ASAL areas. In this country, we have ranchers, people who actually are in the business of rearing livestock. I haven't seen pictures of that livestock or livestock in these organized places dying. What am I saying? I'm saying that I am looking at the simple, because these are simple wananchi.
Yep.
Who have a cash crop called livestock.
Yep.
Which the country has determined to add value to by building abattoirs in those regions. The unfortunate thing is none of them function. None. Now, without the abattoirs, or even as you build the abattoirs, there is need to have a supplementary unit which ensures that what the product that goes into these abattoirs are well catered for, and it takes care of the drought. Now, people who are in this sort of business ensure that that particular or those particular facilities are actually in place. You're trying to tell me that 60 years after independence, the understanding that there must be mitigating circumstances to avert drought or to ensure that drought doesn't affect people adversely has not been considered or thought of all these years, and that nothing could be done. And yet we are two young men here who were trained in Israel.
By government.
Yes. Israel, desert. It's a desert. Okay? The sort of technology and understanding that they had was specifically for the acyl areas.
Yep.
Because that's where we have semi-arid and arid areas. Now, you're telling me we have resources available. We have the technical know-how available. And every year we are told resources are allocated. Agriculture, like health, devolved. So, can we just take a realistic look at this issue and ask ourselves, what on earth is happening in this country?
And where are our leaders? Where are those people who are supposed to be answering these questions? The president and his government are doing what they're doing, and they're justifying what they're justifying. All right? The opposition leadership is out there. They've held 12 concerts. I call them concerts because they go in there, they sing Ion, Lion, Zion, and then they go back home. What they address in those rallies is anything but these things. They do not give the alternative solutions. They don't challenge the government of the day. So this is what you're saying you're doing, but this does not work. For example, the last concert was held in Kitale over the weekend, which was addressed by Raila Odinga, Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Omalwa, Roots Party guy is called Wajakoya, right? Jeremiah Kioni of Jubilee, and the others. Raila read a resolution. And in this resolution, number one, of course, is questioning the legitimacy of this government and saying the people of Kenya voted and these people did legitimacy.
Okay.
Tick that, okay? Then, number two, starts addressing the Kenya Kwanza administration. Point number one is objecting to the creation of new positions to give to political rejects. These are the CIS positions. And then he goes on to talk about the cost of living. And he says the cost of living, yes, people are suffering. And he's telling the people, you guys are suffering. You don't have food. Your unga is expensive. Even your fare is expensive. And what we want the government to do is to return the subsidy that was there before the election. That subsidy, Ndu.
Yeah.
Was it supposed to last for 5 years?
No. 28 days.
The subsidy that Raila was talking about was a subsidy that was introduced by President Uhuru Kenyatta. 8.7 billion shillings or thereabout to be used to bring the cost of unga down, but it was supposed to last only how many days?
28.
28 days, just around the period of elections.
Indeed. And what it did is it was going to lower the cost of a 2 kg packet of maize flour from 205 shillings to 100 shillings.
Did the cost of maize flour come down across the country to 100 shillings?
No, please.
All right. The people of Kitale, what they know about the cost of maize flour is they know some of the millers that they know nearby there closed shop, because we have stories of millers closing shop. Why? They could not access the basic product that they need as a miller, maize. So the subsidy, it spent some money. It didn't bring the cost of maize down. The president comes in and says, this unga subsidy, forget it, I'm going into fertilizer subsidy. The president has now spent 15 billion shillings on the fertilizer subsidy. The questions that we should be hearing are, what is the expected impact of this? And by what? Within what timelines? But Raila is saying, we demand the reintroduction of the subsidy that was removed by this government. It was died. It was ending anyway. In fact, it was over by the 17th of August.
Yes, it was.
By the time William Ruto was doing this, there was no subsidy.
There was no subsidy. And the then CS Munya had already announced that it had come to an end. He had already announced.
This thing is over.
It's over. He had already announced. It didn't work. And that was the truth.
And why didn't it work?
Because the reasons why they gave as to why it didn't work is that they did not receive the adequate money from Treasury in order to make this
So the
happen.
millers didn't actually get. So there was a whole conversation about the millers and money going into an escrow account from the Treasury to support the millers. But the millers said they did not receive the
They
money.
did not receive any money. And so then they were not able to then deliver this maize
So
flour
that
to
scheme
100
died.
shillings.
It died.
Died before it
So when
started.
the opposition leader Raila Odinga reads a resolution, the Kitale resolution, and says we demand the reintroduction of the maize subsidy, which one in particular is he talking about?
2017? There was a subsidy in 2017.
Yes.
Maybe it's that one.
Which one in particular is he talking about? And how much does he want to go there? And has he told his MPs in Parliament to go and push for it in the supplementary budget, which they sat through and passed last week? When he says, I want the petroleum subsidy to come back, which one exactly? Where is it? Right now, the money that you're buying for petrol is being used to stabilize the money that you're buying for diesel. So which subsidy are we talking about here? Is there petroleum subsidy in this country? When he goes ahead to say, you know what, we are not going to participate in IEBC selection. His MPs sat in Parliament when the IEBC Amendment Bill went through Parliament. His MPs sat in Senate when the IEBC Amendment Bill went through Senate. Yesterday, the new selection panel for IEBC was gazetted. What is he talking about?
They've already signed the thing. It's done. They've already passed it. So what are we talking about?
So this resolution was basically just, tusome hii kitu haraka twende, we dance. Lion, Zion. Inawezekana, leo nile. What are we talking about? Where are our leaders? And what you'll hear is Ruto not even responding to those things. He's saying, hey, watu na maandamano unafikiri wataniweza kweli?
Wacha wajaribu tuone.
Nyenye ujamaa wa Lamu, nyenye mnaona kama mimi naweza tishwa na maandamano kweli? Hapana bwana, hapa. Gone.
That conversation.
The issue that is affecting the people is not being addressed by the president, by MPs, by opposition, by Raila, by Martha Karua, by Jeremiah Kioni. None of them is addressing our issues.
There are two stories that people like quoting. The times when I make incursions into social media, I come across them. There's one about a certain Roman emperor. I never met him. But,
no?
His name was Nero. Mm-hmm. The man was supposed to be either playing the harp or playing the trumpet when Rome was burning.
Yes.
Okay?
And said, let it burn.
Yes. Then the other is told about a certain lady who had a senior position in her government. She was called an empress. Mm-hmm. She was the emperor's wife, I think. I think she was called Marie Antoinette or something. Mm-hmm. The story of the bread and the cake. When people were starving in France, and it is argued that this is the thing that led to what is referred to as the French Revolution. If you look at history, there's a lot more to it than that. But why do I point to these two things? People who were in leadership in both cases did not seem to be aware of the severity of the situation in their own countries. Our leaders seem to have taken that path. Busy cutting deals, busy looking for how it is they're all going to make money, and forgetting that this country is burning. It isn't a small issue. If the numbers of people who can't afford a meal keep going up every day, they can't eat. They don't know how they're going to eat. This isn't a problem. This is a disaster. This is catastrophic. How do you justify? How do you explain all this talk about changing this, organizing this, budgeting this, when you cannot feed your people? Simple. We can't say the 5 million now have regular meals and this is how it's been organized. You can't say that. So who exactly are you representing?
That's a good question. Somebody told me the other day that I was being a little bit too sensationalist or sensitive. And I said the problem is that you're not sensitive enough.
The question,
it's not the issue of the people who need to be fed today.
The question that actually begs to be asked every time you listen, you actually I ask myself, do these people live in this country?
You have to ask. No, you really have to ask.
Do they actually have a handle? This one, you don't need to go to school to understand the problem you have in the country. You don't. Because you don't need to go into a classroom to understand hunger. You don't need to go to a classroom in order to be taught that you are unwell. You will know. This doesn't require schooling. Now, when you are tampering with what our Constitution provides as basic rights, fundamental, there's no arguing, there is no debate about it, there's no negotiation. It is a right for every citizen of the country. And you took an oath to ensure that these rights would be upheld. And we keep being told we are a country that's going to be ruled by the rule of law. And you're breaking the rules every single day. Every day when you do not ensure that these basic rights are upheld, what do you think you're doing? You are breaking the rules. You are going against the Constitution. Now, we're getting to a point where I will need to ask, what do we do? Should we call these leaders? Should a tribunal be formed? Should a commission be formed? So that these people who are the top leadership of the country are called to come and explain how it is their countrymen and women and children are in the state they are in, and we do not see any visible change taking place. Because if the numbers of those who need help and the numbers of those who are dying and need not die is increasing, then somewhere along the line, the oath you took is becoming meaningless.
Indeed it is. And I have to ask a question because maybe I don't know. Okay? So when an office is established in this country, one would assume that in order for the establishment of said office, there had to be significant or adequate funds put behind it. If you're going to establish an office, that means that there are going to be certain elements that run the office. It must have staff. It must have premises. These staff must be serviced on a monthly basis in terms of remuneration. It's going to be supported by ABCD, isn't it? So you're going to have that running. It's an added expense. We saw the super prime cabinet. What? I'm not sure. What is
Prime Cabinet Secretary?
Thank you very much. He has now established the office of the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and this is to now support the work of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. And I was befuddled because I had to ask myself, what exactly is happening here? We've not even gone to how the office will be run. The launch alone, where fanfare and beautiful things, nice. If anything, it spits in the face of the families of those people who have to go and drink dirty, stinking water when they don't have food.
Yep.
It does.
It flies in the face of any kind of dignity for Kenyans who are suffering today. And then you want to smile and come and tell people, it's necessary to do such things, that the spouses of position holders have often been left out, whereby they could come and serve in a support role. Those are the things now. Those are the things that you come and do on a regular basis, that you tell people, do you actually know what's happening in the country? And I actually have to say, no. You have no idea. Neither are you sensitive to the things that are actually happening in this country. Since we're going to focus on drought, Eric said we should focus on drought. Let's not talk about anything else. So let's stick on that drought issue before we start talking about other things. So you tell me, somebody in that situation where there's biting drought, where they can't find clean water, God forbid if somebody in that situation gets sick, where do you think they're going to go?
They will die.
Yes, they will die.
They will die. They will die.
If the lack of food doesn't kill them first.
I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I was asking myself, given the copycat nature we have when it comes to many of these things, I was imagining a situation where my MCA in my neck of the woods decides that he's also inaugurating
office of the first lady of the ward.
Of the ward. And then let's start with the fundamentals. Then the MPs do the same. Senators do the same. And everybody does the same. I was just thinking about it. And I was thinking, yes, if the idea is to ensure that the service provision which that particular office has is made better and that people actually get to enjoy the services and they can see the benefits directly. Okay, the question is, how exactly are we going to see these benefits? I'd like to know.
I'm very interested in this one.
I'd like to know. Because I'm not going to cast unnecessary aspersions. There may be something that...
No, I'm going to cast. Allow me to cast. Because what is it? If anything, if for the optics alone, how does it look, man? On the same day, in the same news... This is how it was. In the same news bulletin.
Yes.
You are seeing fanfare and fireworks. And then on the other side, you're seeing people who are drinking dirty water.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
And pictures of dead livestock.
In the same country.
In the same country at the same time. Now, do you understand the playing of the harp or the trumpet?
While Rome is burning.
Precisely. Yep. I mean, the president of Rome then was called an emperor. We get it.
Yeah.
And the president of France was also called an emperor. That's what they call their presidents. But were those people in touch? The answer is no. They were not in touch.
Out of touch.
Completely not in touch.
And even when they pretend, because now these ones are pretending to actually go and, mingle with the people. Every week they're somewhere. Every week, those in the national government are somewhere mingling and interacting with the people. Every week, those in the opposition, the minority, are somewhere mingling with the people. They are not listening to the people. They are going to tell the people what they think the people feel and what they ought to hear. None of them has made a journey towards any of the 23 counties to actually address those people in those 23 counties, because we won't even find them.
The absurdity of it all is that somewhere at the back of their mind, they seem to actually think they have a handle on things. That's the thing that I find completely absurd. Because when I listen to some of these people talking, there's a conviction about the way they're speaking.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, folks, we have a handle on this thing and we know what we're doing and we're doing the right thing. And I'm thinking, okay, this right thing is what exactly?
It's just a matter of time.
Yes, I've
Right.
got it. Yes. So beyond the talk and beyond the promise, okay, should, for example, not follow, meaning after you've spoken, something can be pointed to and I can say, I see.
It's all talk.
I see.
And the picture is, and like I was having a conversation, and among some circles, looking at the Nigeria election, and I looked at the chaos. I mean, this is an example to draw a parallel here. I looked at the chaos that happens in Nigeria. I look at the abject poverty in some of the states of Nigeria, and I say to myself, this is the true picture of Nigeria. This is the picture of Nigeria. It is when people are scrambling for cash because Central Bank of Nigeria decides that they're going to recall old notes, but then there is no adequate provision of new notes. So people are climbing over themselves to get into the banking hall to get their own money. And I say, that is the picture of Nigeria. And then I looked at that woman who was struggling to get water to pass between goats and her children. And I say, the most vulnerable at any time in any nation is the true picture of the nation. Forget about all these other things that you want to talk about.
Actually,
that is the true picture of a nation. If you're comfortable with that picture, then I have to question your position in a leadership capacity.
Let me add to what you're saying and say it is the picture of the soul of the nation. And this is where now our religious leaders have to come in. We don't hear them speaking either. If they're whispering, because I don't hear it. I don't hear them. Now, should they, given the mandate that they have when it comes to ensuring that the wholesome human being is catered for, should that not be at the forefront of actually ensuring that the right conversations is had about these things? We don't hear them.
Yep.
Instead, you hear of people programming and telling you this Sunday, if you come, there'll be a miracle. Surely.
Did you say if you...
At 11 o'clock, it's a miracle service. You come at that particular point in time, there'll be a miracle.
But you must not come after because...
Yes. So miracles are like bonga points. If you make a phone call, you accumulate something called a bonga point or a reward system that supermarkets have. Really. So you get to the point where you actually feel, these religions are a bit of a waste of time now. Okay, because clearly the God that many Kenyans believe in is not the same God as the religious leaders have. They are praying to two different gods. Yes. So when the religious leaders come together to pray for rain, it's not going to rain. Because that God of theirs, I don't think is the one who brings rain. There's a different God who when you pray to, you will actually get rain. So when you find yourself in this impossible situation where the loudest silence is on matters that actually concern us the most and issues that will affect us the most, because they will affect us. They're already affecting us, but they will affect us that much more. In the previous hour, we were talking about those bandits. What do you think is a breeding ground for banditry? What do you think is a breeding ground for terrorists?
Absolutely.
What do you think is a breeding
what do you
ground?
think? It's like dry tinder. All you have to do is put a match to it. What do you think was the stuff that revolutions were made of in times gone by? Look at any revolution that happened anywhere in the world,
including Kenya, when people decided they wanted their independence.
Yep.
What did it got to the point where people said, "This is me. This is the wall. This is a rock. I'm going to have to push against something," and people revolt. It's the stuff that revolutions are made of. This thing that you're giving to people. Look, I'm not saying that you caused the drought too. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in a responsibility capacity you have as leadership in any nation is that you are supposed to then guard the livelihoods of people by providing 1, 2, 3. Now, in the absence of that provision, it's dry tinder, my friend, and all somebody needs to do is strike a match and Rome burns.
Yep. That's it. And it's high time that we as Kenyans actually just tell these people, stop. Stop it. Enough is enough. Enough is enough, President William Ruto. Start addressing these issues that affect the people on a direct basis. Stop addressing Raila Odinga at every opportunity that you get. All right? You're in office. And if you believe you're in office legitimately, then do your work. Unless you're also questioning your own legitimacy, then respond to Raila Odinga.
But if not,
If you're in office illegitimately, then deal with the issues that affect Kenyans on a daily basis. Address the 1 million children who are joining JSS and they don't have teachers. Address the 5.4 million Kenyans who don't have food today to eat. Address all Kenyans who are wondering when the price of basic commodities is going to start coming down. Address those issues. And you, Raila Odinga, if you believe that 8 million people voted for you, then show them the leadership that they were craving for. Tell us how best we should get these things. Not telling us 10 days we start marching to State House. To do what in State House? To do
then when
what
you reach
exactly?
Alpha, when you get there, then
So after that, then what? Not tell us, oh, so the next meeting we're going to have, so we've moved from Kitale, the next one I don't know where we're going to have. When Ruto says we go and pray in Nyayo Stadium, you say we go and pray in Jacaranda. If you believe that you got those 8 million that this supposed whistleblower told you that you got, then show that leadership, Raila Odinga. Stop saying, oh, I'm reading a resolution and we are going to march to State House. That's what people want. It's not it. I'm tired sometimes. Enough is enough. It's about time that the leaders of this country started doing what we pay them to do. And even those that we don't pay directly, we sustain them. We fuel and fund their lifestyles. Do your job.